Today we've got a crazy revenge story on a pastor. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, you want to talk on a speakerphone in a public bathroom? Fine, but I'll make sure you can't hear. I was at the Great Wally World, and I was sitting in a stall tending to my business when the bathroom door opened and a man talking on his phone entered the bathroom. And I mean loudly. It was like he was yelling into his phone and he had the phone on speaker with the volume jacked up. Normally I don't mind, but as the minutes dragged by and the conversation showed no signs of slowing down, I started getting annoyed. 5 minutes later, when I finished my natural duties and got out of the stall, he was still yelling into his phone. Fine, you want to be loud and obnoxious in public? Game on. I washed my hands and, like any other guy, turned the hand dryer on. Now, the hand dryers at the store are super loud, and the one I was using was placed in a spot where it emitted a shrill, high-pitched sound if you held your hands close enough to the nozzle, and it echoes off the walls. I made sure to take an extra long time drying my hands, making sure not a drop of water remained. The guy had left his stall and exited the bathroom before I finished, holding the phone to his ear. It was petty, I know, but very satisfying. I feel like almost any mid-2000s movie or TV show had like the perfect personification of this character. When they first really started getting those Bluetooth headsets, there would always be that one guy in those shows walking around like, "Oh yeah, no, let's double up on that stock. Also, can you get the report to my desk by the time I get there? I want to take the scenic route in my Lexus." OddZombie5972 commented, "I wonder what kind of response I could get by insulting that person's character while the person who is on the other side of the phone can hear it. I mean, I almost entirely believe these people talk on speaker like this in order to show the world that they're important, interesting, and busy, like it's some sort of signal they want to project. Insulting them will invoke their image protection service and they'll be forced to act. Act is what they'll do. The loudest people lack proper strategy. Haven't tried this yet. I'm not going to be an idiot for the sake of science." OP responded commenting, "Honestly, I get annoyed whenever someone has the volume on their phone up in public. Like, if I'm on break and one of my coworkers is watching a video on their phone with the volume jacked up, I'll turn off my earbuds, turn up the volume on my phone, and crack open a game on my phone just to get the point across. It typically doesn't work, but some people do start to understand how annoying they are. P.S. I almost exclusively play Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links on my phone. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of revenge, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is Overcharged me at the nail salon and led to chaos. I got my nails done this morning at the same nail salon I've been patronizing for almost 2 years. It has 1,000 plus great reviews online, and they've always done amazing work. They don't post their prices anywhere, but I've always paid $40 to $50. However, it hasn't been consistent, as in sometimes I would be asked to pay $50 and other times later $40. When I asked about the price, usually when it was $50, they would say I got a nice discount at $40 and standard was $50. The $10 never bothered me, so I never made a fuss about it and kind of chalked it up to more inexperienced front desk workers not tracking well to the established price. I also have gotten into the habit of asking the price before they start, but forgot to ask this morning because I was just getting my normal nails. Today, I finished up my appointment and the front desk told me it was $70. I was surprised because I got them done last month and I'm pretty sure it was only $40. The lady said prices went up, which I felt should have been stated somewhere, but I know that businesses are nervous about the economy, so I understand a hike. I paid my bill and internally decided to find a new salon, not because they did anything wrong, but paying $70 for nails isn't worth it for me while there are cheaper places around, given the quality will almost definitely decrease. After I paid, I realized I left something at my seat. I had been quietly chatting with the lady sitting next to me during our appointments, and we were getting the exact same service in different colors. As I went to grab my bag, I couldn't help making a quiet comment to her that $70 for our nails is crazy. Yes, this was a complaint, but also wanted to warn her about what to expect. She immediately got agitated and asked her nail tech how it could be this much because she had never paid more than $30 for the service. She looked like she was going to cry and she said that she didn't have $70 for the service today. Her nail tech tried to quickly do damage control and said that since she was such a loyal customer, her price would be $30. This didn't really calm her down though. She asked how long I'd been going there, and I said 2 years, and she said that she had been coming for less than a year. At this point, other customers at the busy salon started paying attention to what was going on, and a few, 7 to 8, other people started sharing what they paid for their nails, and it ranged from $30 to $70. At that point, I had my bag and no reason to stay, but as I left, the whole salon was getting heated with everyone realizing that they don't actually have a set price for their services and just charge as much as they can get out of you. I will definitely be leaving a review, and something tells me that the others there will as well. You know, the way OP was writing this, I almost thought it was going to go down the route of the person working at the front desk was trying to steal money from customers. But no, I guess the whole business is just in on this practice of trying to milk as much money out of their customers as possible. Sorry, it's actually $70 now, and we will take a gratuity too if you want to leave it. Avid Learner Bot commented, "It's almost unbelievable. My cousin had a similar experience, I guess, and she was quite upset about it. Those prices should be consistent, shouldn't they? It's a question of respect for the customers, really, not just about money." I reckon that salon owner is going to learn a hard lesson. Transparency is key. A friend of mine said the best way to handle it is to simply walk away. And, well, maybe leave a pointed review. It would certainly teach them something. Our next story is, I'll shush you back, only better. I was at an annual social/fundraiser event for a group I was active with. Nothing super fancy. Polo shirt was fancy enough. Nothing super expensive. Ticket was probably $30 or so and even included a meal. We were all sitting at round tables. There was a speaker who was droning on, so I started whispering comments to my friend who was sitting next to me. I kept getting shushed by the old lady at the next table. Eventually, I ran out of things to say, so I stopped talking, but then this same lady had the audacity to whisper something to her neighbor. She was no louder than I was, but I shushed her so loudly that she didn't say another word until the speaker was done talking. Just somebody being super grouchy and hypocritical, like they really cared what the speaker was droning on about. Rules for thee, not for me. Also, if you want to leave me a gratuity, I'll take one. Peaches and Candy commented, I took my elderly aunt in her 80s out to the movies for a matinee. During the previews, she was telling me some story. The woman behind her told her to stop talking. I responded, it's just the previews, and she shushed me. I told my aunt to finish her story, but she was intimidated. So not 10 minutes into the movie, this Karen took a phone call and started a conversation. So I turned around and said, oh, we can't talk during the previews, but you can take a call during the movie? She loudly called me a bench and made her friend move over a few seats to get away from us. Our next story is, you should smile more. I was out running errands, lost in thought, just trying to get through the day. As I walked past a man, he looked at me and said, you should smile more. It would look much better on you, with a stupid smile on his face like he was giving me genuine advice. I stopped, turned to him and said, I just got back from identifying my sister's body. She was murdered last night. His face went pale. His mouth opened and then closed like he was searching for words, but nothing came out. He just nodded awkwardly and practically ran away. I don't actually have a sister, but the entitlement some people have to dictate a stranger's emotions is infuriating. You have no idea what someone is dealing with, and assuming they owe you a smile is just ignorant and selfish. Maybe next time he'll think twice before telling someone how they should feel. When is my savior gonna come along and say, oh come on, you should shriek more, it would look good on you? Or, hey, I like the frown, keep up that resting witch face. Don't engage those muscles any more than you have to. You know what, I agree with OP, people should just keep it to themselves. Our next story is, she ruined my birthday. My birth mother isn't a great person, just gonna put that out there. For my birthday one year, I think maybe 14th birthday, she was mean about everything for no reason. She said things like, don't eat too much cake, you don't want the extra pounds. That's all you have planned because you don't have many friends? I plan to see a movie, have ice cream, and go to the bowling alley afterwards. Apparently, she had already seen the movie because she told me all about the movie I was about to see. Later that night, she was at the bowling alley. She got very loud and drunk. She talked very explicitly and got up to leave with 2 men. As she was leaving, she said, my daughter is OP, don't tell her I'm leaving with these guys. So everyone made fun of me for having a sexually promiscuous birth mother. The day after my birthday, I went to her house to confront her about ruining my birthday. She said more hurtful things, so fine. I gathered up maybe about 15 or so crickets and let them loose in her bedroom. The first night I could hear the crickets, but she did nothing. Second night, the same thing. The next day, I caught her looking at her bedroom windows and asked her what she was doing. She said nothing and told me to go away. Next night, she was angry and said that I needed to go outside and stop the crickets from chirping. I wasn't quite sure how to do that, so I grabbed a drink, a snack, and a book. I spent a while outside reading and snacking, came back inside, and told my birth mom I squished every cricket I could find. She said, "Good." That morning, I woke up to her sleeping on the couch. She was on the phone with one of her friends, later telling her friend how horrible it was to get no sleep because all she could hear were crickets all night long. She caught me smiling and she accused me of doing something. I said, "I'm not sure what you mean. But if I did do something, it would be well-deserved and then some for ruining my birthday and having school peers bully me because my mom left the bowling alley with 2 guys." She got very angry and kicked me out. I went to go and live with my grandmother again, where I told her what happened. She told me that was a bad thing to do, and then she cheered pop cans with me and smiled. You know, I'm almost curious what OP's mom was like growing up to make their grandma so eagerly happy to just cheer those pop cans with OP, and from the sounds of it, recognize that their kid is no saint. Mgararara commented, "As someone who had a bearded dragon growing up, I understand just how awful crickets in your room can be. He wouldn't eat them all, so I would end up getting up in the middle of the night to squish them with his poop scooper because they drove me and my sister crazy. Absolutely brilliant revenge, but I'm sorry you had to go through that. Hope you've had a lot of good birthdays since." Our next story is, well, she wanted some and got some. About 5 years ago, my husband started to get too close to a woman in our running club. She friended him on social media, then they were messaging a lot. I saw it all happening and called him on it, only to have him tell me it was nothing and they were just friends. BS. Finally, I happened to be using his printer and he was out. His computer was on and his messenger was on an open tab. Of course, I looked at it. It confirmed everything. Not only that they were messaging all the time, but that they had met up once and had kissed. Then he seemed to not be responding to her the same way anymore, and often waited a long time before responding at all. She kept trying to get him to go to her place or meet up with her. She was putting me down and criticizing our marriage. He wasn't responding to those messages. I confronted him and he admitted it all. He said it went too far and he wanted to work on our marriage. Of course, I was angry and hurt, and I know he was wrong for what he did. He is absolutely not innocent. We agreed to give it a real try for 2 months and then reevaluate. I also insisted that he block her on everything. He did. She then started emailing him at work and at home. She texted him, she called him. He didn't respond to any of it and told me about it. At the 2-month mark, we were better than ever, and she was still doing it. I arranged for a glitter bomb of you-know-what shaped glitter to be delivered to her at work. She must have figured out it was me, eventually, because she finally stopped. Last I heard, she was fired from a job because she had an affair with one of the owners. And the best revenge is that my husband and I have been married for 10 years now and are still doing very well. I mean, I'm glad it worked out for OP, but man, I think I'm just impressed that OP was actually able to get past this and stay with their partner. I mean, sure, it worked out, but I don't know if I'd be able to get past it. I feel like somebody like that, even with apparently being the most loyal person ever afterwards, would always kind of have that tainted smell to me of, you cheated. Cad121 commented, "It's bad enough that a cheater will cheat, but one of the most infuriating things they do is deny your reality. Hey, I see you're getting very chatty and cozy with this other person, and it seems to be crossing a line. Oh my god, why are you so jealous? Can't I have hobbies? Can't I have female friends? You're so crazy and controlling." It's only when they're caught with incontrovertible proof that they admit it. Oops, my bad, you were right the whole time. Dude straight up lied to your face and made you question your reality, but congratulations on making it work. I couldn't do it. I would never forget what he'd done and wind up the marriage police. Is he faithful, or had he just gotten sneakier? Is that woman looking at him a little too long? Does he have a burner phone? Is he really working late or going to the gym? Does he have an email I don't know about? Is he chatting on LinkedIn? If he isn't grateful to have me and only me, he can move along. I'd rather have my solitude than try to keep a cheater from cheating. OP responded commenting, he has actually really worked on himself and our marriage. We also have an open email, open phone policy now. The lying was super hard to deal with, and it honestly has taken a long time for me to really trust again. Well, trust but verify. He doesn't go anywhere after work and only uses the gym at his job with a coworker that I know. He doesn't even close his computer down anymore, and I can look at his entire history. I went through a really hard time last year, lost my sister and was very depressed. He was concerned when I didn't answer the phone one day. He left work and rushed home. I work from home. He said he doesn't know what he would do without me, and I believe him. Plus, he knows that even one more and I'm gone. And I'll make him sell the paid-off house. This next story is, made a moocher have to pay. I, male 36, have a good group of friends from my last job that I still see regularly. We've all moved on to other jobs, but still try to hang out every few months or so, depending on everyone's schedule. It's nothing fancy, usually just grab a bite to eat somewhere and catch up. The problem came at the end of last year. One of my friends became good friends with his coworker, I'll call Mike. Mike has slowly joined our friend group and has gone out to eat with us twice now. Now, Mike is a great guy by all accounts, except he has expensive tastes and tries the let's split the bill evenly, even if he's ordered more than anyone else. First time it happened, whatever. It wasn't too bad. The second time, he ordered a full $20 more than anyone else. I should have stood my ground, but I'm too much of a people pleaser. It's something I'm working on. Well, I recently got a raise at work and wanted to celebrate with my friends. I suggested we go to a steakhouse for lunch. That way people could order off the lunch menu without spending too much. As soon as I mentioned it, Mike loved the idea. What a shocker, right? I've been seeing a bunch of posts lately about this sort of thing, and the overwhelming comment is tell the server ahead of time that we'll be splitting the bill. So that is exactly what I did. We went out for lunch and everybody ordered reasonable lunch dishes except Mike. He got the steak and lobster. Since I was on the other corner of the table, I got to order last. Before I ordered, I asked everyone at the table if they were okay ordering separately. I wanted to splurge since I was celebrating and didn't want to make everyone else pay for it. Everyone was on board with it, except for one person. I'll let you guess who that was. While we were all eating and catching up, Mike barely spoke to me. I think he was upset that he had to pay for his full meal. Oh well, it made my prime rib taste that much better. So I get Mike's hustle here, but I don't understand him being all upset and taking it out on OP when OP does something to correct against that. I mean, it's not even like Mike was actually called out in front of everybody. There was no exposure of Mike's hustle, so I don't understand why he was dumb enough to act all upset and pouty. I guess maybe because he doesn't have the money for it. Hiker2190 commented, the first time I met my ex-wife, we went with a big group to a super nice seafood restaurant. I had just gotten paid that day, so I wanted to celebrate with a 1-pound lobster tail. When the bill came, everyone in the group insisted on splitting the bill evenly, but I insisted more that I would then cover the tip, which would more than make up for the extravagant dinner I had. She said years later that that's why she agreed to go out with me, because I was a decent, upstanding person who would never make someone else pay for his meal. Our next story is, this is the level of petty we should all aspire to. Borrowed from local rants and raves. I'm not posting this anonymously because I hope the person on the other side of this sees it and will know who I am. This morning, out running errands, I saw what appeared to be a cell phone in a parking lot near the Purple Cow, and sure enough it was. I took said phone, cleaned it up and put it to charge because it only had 12% battery left, and waited. Well, about 2 hours later, the phone rings and I answer. Instead of inquiring as to whom I was and how I got the phone, the gentleman on the other side began cursing at me, calling me a thief and a no-good POS, went on to say how he was going to track the phone and when he found me, he was going to reach up my butt and pull my guts out. Well, sir, just so you know, your phone has a good charge, so you should be able to track it. And to give you a head start, it's now somewhere off 112 eastbound between Pete's Highway and Juban Exit. Good luck, and feel free to contact again when and if you find it. Our first chat was so lovely. I'm really curious how many of you out there think that OP is staunchly in the wrong here. Yes, this guy did call and immediately laid into OP, calling them a thief and accusing them of stealing the phone. But you have to consider the context, right? This guy is assuming that their phone, a multi-$100 device, surely, was probably reasonably expected to have been stolen. Was it just their mistake? Sure, but you give them a chance to own up to it. You say, actually, I appreciate all those harsh words, but I actually found your phone. I'm holding on to it at the place you lost it. And then you hope they have the honest ability to say, oh my god, I'm sorry, blah blah blah. Greg in Valley commented, I came across a cell phone one time that obviously belonged to a teenage girl. This was before digital locks were popular, so I just scrolled through the phone and found Mom, dialed it, had a lovely conversation with a woman, then proceeded to get an address and FedExed it. 2 weeks later, I received a lovely thank you card and reimbursement for the mailing. Real Live Mermaid commented, same thing happened to my daughter. She left it at a movie theater, someone found it, and just like with you, it was before Face ID. They scrolled till they found Mom on the phone, called me and said that they would turn it in to the theater manager. She went back and picked it up the next day. We were both grateful. Our next story is, work forces me to train my own replacement, so I do, with the same effort they put into hiring him. My first job out of high school was doing the landscaping for a posh hotel near my hometown. I loved the job and the work was often demanding but rewarding nonetheless. After working there for a few years, the hotel was sold to a businessman as the owner wanted to retire to Florida. The new owner had a gambling addiction and a drinking problem. He constantly drained funds from his businesses to support his vices, which showed in how quickly the hotel went from posh to the literal definition of a roach motel. I continued doing my job faithfully despite the rapid downturn in overall appearance. My paychecks were still nice and I didn't feel as many effects of the downturn as other departments. About 6 months into the new ownership, the owner introduces me to his nephew and says that he wants me to train him to do my job so that I don't have to spend all day doing the landscaping for the property. The nephew seemed more concerned with playing Pokemon on his Game Boy than working, and even when I set him to simple tasks like raking leaves or watering flowers, I would often find him playing his Game Boy somewhere or sitting in the lounge drinking with his uncle. I constantly complained about him to the owner and told him that I had enough seniority in my position to search for and train a more suitable person to do the job. That's when the owner dropped the bombshell. His nephew was going to replace me in 6 months. He was only paying his nephew minimum wage, whereas I was getting nearly 3 times as much because of my seniority and how much the original owner loved me. At this point, I realized that I was too expensive for him and he wanted to have more money available for his habits. I immediately started looking for a new job. I continued working at the hotel, but I didn't put as much effort into it. I showed the lazy nephew some basic stuff, but I pretty much left him to his own devices for the rest of the day. By the time I was asked to leave, the amount of neglect was overwhelmingly apparent. Poison ivy was growing around entrances. The normally well-manicured lawns looked like overgrown meadows. 6 months after I left, there was a massive fire in the middle garden because the nephew somehow thought the most effective way to get rid of poison ivy and weeds in the mulch was to douse it in gasoline and light it aflame. He was stood nearby with a garden hose to put it out, but was swiftly overwhelmed as dry leaves and other material quickly spread the flames into the hotel itself. The fire department was called, the hotel evacuated, the nephew was arrested for arson despite trying to convince everyone that he fully intended to put out the fire with the garden hose after he got the desired effect. The owner was forced to sell the hotel and restaurant on the property to a franchise. He was eventually audited by the IRS and arrested for tax fraud. Today, the property is bustling again. The restaurant was bought by a Mexican restaurant franchise and does decent business. The 2 side blocks of rooms that were damaged in the fire were torn down and turned into an outdoor banquet area for the Mexican restaurant. The main hotel has bounced back after the idiot owner was replaced. The entire property barely resembles what it looked like when I worked there. Edit because of outrage. I've edited out the Pakistani descriptor since everyone thinks I'm being racist or xenophobic. There's only 2 things I remember about him. A, he was from Pakistan. B, he was a complete Richard. So now you'll see idiot owner instead. Sorry, it wasn't my intention to offend people. I think OP had it on the money as far as the effort required to training this guy. Minimum wage, he clearly doesn't want to do the job anyway, and I don't think the owner of this roach motel really cared to begin with, so yeah, just milk those checks as long as you can, and then move somewhere else that actually appreciates you. Sense2 commented, "This is how it played out in my mind. Nephew gets yelled at uncle to fix the landscaping. Nephew comes up with a plan to perform 12 months of landscaping in one day. The plan goes as well as any plan the nephew comes up with. Nephew goes to jail. Uncle saved money by not having fire insurance, but that wouldn't matter due to arson. Loses hotel. You, and now us, have schadenfreude. Well played. Unless it really was arson and the uncle set up his nephew to take the fall, but that calls for some real ingenuity on the uncle's part. Well, the uncle is a risk-taker, gambler. Our next story is, I've just realized how petty I am, the toilet paper roll. My partner never replaces the toilet paper roll. Maybe never learned because before me, he was some magical merman whose butt was always cleaned by fish. I don't know. Leaves the holder empty. Alone, exposed, cold, annoys the freak out of me, especially if I don't notice until I've sat. I resent him for the waddle walk to get new paper. No woman wants the penguin as their spirit bird. So recently when I replaced the roll, I put it on the wrong way and leave the roll unstarted. It looks immaculate. This way he 1. Tries to use nice pristine new roll, 2. Realizes he can't find the end, 3. Tries tearing the edge the right way around, which doesn't work, 4. Either hacks into it sideways like some dyslexic bear, or pulls the roll off, finds the end, tears it properly, and puts it back on. Just how I asked him to do it, but he doesn't remember to actually do. But this way was 8 times as long and meant I stole 15 minutes of his poop game time. Justice. Now, is what OP's doing the best way to do it, or would it be better for OP to just not replace it? I mean, in this hypothetical, it sounds like either way, OP's not following up with them using it when they put it back on this roll, so it's not like OP needs it. Ruled by Cats commented, don't replace it either. Take a roll in with you and put it back in the closet or wherever you store them when you're finished. Tenebrous Sunshine commented, I had a roommate in college that was like OP's partner, and this is what I did. Kept my own personal stash in my room and brought my roll with me to and from the bathroom. Took them a few times getting stranded to get the memo. Our next story is petty revenge on a doofus speaking on the phone in public bathroom. I came into a public bathroom and saw a dude speaking very loudly on a phone. Like real loud, he was on the verge of shouting. He's not doing anything, just standing next to the sink and talking. And guess what? The phone's on speaker and the person from the other side is talking really loudly too. It was a bathroom in a library, so I guess he went there to take his call. Anyway, I enter a stall and I figure he'll finish soon enough, but it goes on and on. Honestly, it was so loud it was painful. Normally in this type of situation, I would join in on the conversation, but they were talking in a foreign language. So I do something else. After I'm done with my business, I go wash my hands and just next to him say loudly, "Phew, sorry for the smell. I took a huge crap," and leave. To be fair, with all of the people that I would be on the phone with, if I was somehow obnoxious enough to take the phone call right there, I feel like we would just start laughing and then get back to whatever the phone call was about. I don't know if what OP did was actually enough of a deterrent to do anything. I mean, surely whoever they're calling in a public bathroom is not going to be sensitive enough that something like, "Oh, I took a huge crap," is going to be damaging in any way. Our next story is petty revenge on an ableist pastor who made fun of a grocery store worker's speech impediment a year later. Back in the 90s, I took a summer job at a church that my grandparents attended and my family would occasionally attend. I was 16 at the time and did consider becoming a pastor after high school. The church I worked at was run by a husband and wife pastor team. Both seemed nice and welcoming and would answer a lot of my questions regarding college divinity programs, degrees, internships, etc. This couple had replaced the founding pastor who had passed 5 or 6 years before. The founding pastor had a house built next to the church for pastor housing. This will come into play later. Like many other churches, they hosted a 1-week vacation Bible school. After the second day of Bible school, the female pastor saw that some of the snacks and beverage supplies were running low. She asked me to go with her to a grocery store to buy more snacks and beverages. The grocery store we went to was known to hire adults with intellectual disabilities as baggers. The female pastor and I got what was needed and got in line. It was a busy day and there were 2 more customers ahead of us in line. The bagger, who had an intellectual disability, was chatting with customers and the cashier. She had a speech impediment and the female pastor laughed at how she was talking and turned to me and said, "Those people shouldn't be working here and are just a nuisance." I lost all respect for the female pastor. I didn't say anything and yes, I regret it. The rest of Vacation Bible School went well. I worked 2 more weeks and then summer break was done. By the next summer, I took a job at a local hardware and lumber store. The owner, a guy with a daughter with Down syndrome, would give discounts to churches, homeless shelters, and other nonprofits. The husband and wife pastor had contacted the store regarding lumber and other materials to remodel a bathroom in the pastor's house. The store owner knew I had previously worked at that church, as I'd listed them as a reference. The store owner mentions that the couple would be coming in later to look at pricing for materials. The store owner's daughter would sometimes help out of the store, or just hang out. I make the decision to tell the hardware store owner about the female pastor's ableist comments about the grocery store employee from a year before. He wasn't happy. He said he would still do business with them, but wouldn't give them a discount. I always took pleasure in knowing that the female pastor's ableist attitude prevented her from getting a discount. I mean, I'm glad that people like this didn't get like some free handout or discount or whatever, but I am kind of sad that, at least I'm assuming, the pastor never actually found out why it was that they weren't getting a deal, that they were never told that they were an absolute jerk to that girl for no reason, and that's why there's no handouts there. Avid Learner Bot commented, "This pastor's attitude was straight up messed up. Can't believe she dissed someone based on a speech impediment. That's ableism at the worst. Good for the narrator for calling her out, refusing to give in to discriminatory demands. Store owner's kid having an intellectual disability just adds more layers to the story of people standing up for what's right. And yeah, it's freaked up how some so-called people of faith can be such bigots while preaching love and acceptance. This pastor needs a serious reality check." Our next story is, I CC'd my ex's boss telling him my ex exposed sensitive info to others, etc. after my ex said that I was never going to be successful without him and sabotaging my sales. This weekend, I posted some of my artwork for sale on Nextdoor, trying to get commissions to help pay for medical expenses. Everything was going well. I was getting lots of responses and interest. However, most people would disappear after the first exchange of messages, which is normal when selling online. Saturday night, I opened my email and saw a message from my ex, whom I'll call John. He saw my post and was making fun of me, saying that I would have more success if I stood on the street and asked for money, and that I would never be successful without him. I ignored the email and deleted it, trying not to let it affect me. I messaged some of the interested people to follow up, and one person replied that they were no longer interested because they received a message from someone saying I wasn't a good artist and that I was crazy, so they shouldn't spend any money on me. I'm not sure how many others he might have contacted. I put 2 and 2 together, and I know it was my ex. For context, I dated him for almost 2 years. He was the biggest narcissist and came from an affluent background. His dad owned several pawn shops, so he grew up very well off. Like most relationships, ours started out well, but then it changed. He became mentally and verbally abusive. Due to all the abuse, my health declined, and he would tell me that all of my illnesses were just in my mind. He would argue with me every time I went to the doctor. He was extremely controlling. I wasn't allowed to work or have friends. He was always jealous. The day I decided to leave, he shoved me really hard into the wall because I didn't want to give him my phone. He's 6'3" and I'm 5'3", so you can imagine the power difference. I left him 6 months ago. Since then, he's tried reaching out, begging me to get back together. I've been couch surfing at friends' places for a few months, but recently, I moved in with my best friend and her parents. They have a little suite that they're letting me rent out. The problem is, it's in the same area as my ex. I barely go out, so I doubt I'll run into him by chance, but now he knows I'm in the area. Back to this weekend, I'm so angry because I'm doing my best to seek medical help and survive, and he's here sabotaging all the efforts I'm making to force me to go back with him. I'm not proud of what I did because I know it was impulsive, but since he emailed me from his work email, and I know who his boss is, I used to do my ex's work, I CC'd his boss, attaching his previous email and telling the boss if he knew that John shares sensitive company information with friends and that I did XYZ work John was supposed to do. Since then, I've received a few calls from no caller ID from my ex. He's left voicemail saying that I need to deny the email or he'll get fired, blah blah. Oh, the poor baby. I'm sure OP's just chomping at the bit to step right up and deny that email. In all honesty though, this guy had it coming. I mean, they had OP doing their work for them? Like, how is that not going to blow up for him? Like, surely he doesn't even know all that's actually even going on if OP was doing all the work for them. It may eventually have gotten out there anyways. Or like this, they put a target on their back and make it very easy for OP to get revenge. OP was way too good for this guy. Avid Learner Bot commented, "Dude, this is just wild. Like, I can't even believe your ex would go to those lengths, you know? He's gotta be insane or something. I hope his boss actually fires him for all that crap he pulled. What a total jerk, man. And hey, way to stand up for yourself by exposing him like that." What's the deal with people doing crap like this? Is there some deep-seated issue they're trying to solve by messing with others? Mila777 commented, "It's about control. Some people can't stand to not be in control. If he had dumped her, he probably wouldn't care. But because she left him, now he's going to show her how much she needs him by doing his best to sabotage anything of hers that's within his reach." Our next story is, "Don't freak with the person who lives above you." Hello Reddit. So I've lived in my building for over a year now, and the first people I befriended lived directly below me. Let's call them J and E. J works as a chef full-time, whilst E games all night and sleeps all day because her anxiety makes it too hard for her to work apparently. Anyway, a few weeks ago, J changed jobs and was running low on money, going from weekly to monthly pay, and asked to borrow 30 British pounds. Not a huge deal. I of course said no worries, thinking we're friends and we live in the same building so everything would be fine. He promised to pay me back in 1 week. He did not. Second late week, I texted him multiple times nicely and was completely ignored. I didn't want to start drama in the building or anything, so I hatched a plan. The new builds in England are basically built out of cardboard and they can hear all of my footsteps. I'm top floor, so since I moved in, I've learned to be very gentle with my steps to be a good neighbor. However, after the theft, I ran everywhere, leaped from my bed each morning at 6 a.m. like a flying hippo to crash upon the floor, shaking it. I stomped every step, I shuffled, I even played chase and got chased by the 7-kilogram cat to his joy. I made so much noise every morning, even I started to feel a little guilty. It only took 6 days before he texted me at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning asking what my bank details were so he could transfer it over. Winning. Don't steal from the people who live directly above you. We control your sleep and general peace, you absolute muppets. Where's the logic? I just have to ask, when OP wrote down winning, is that just like a normal thing that people write down or say, or is that like a direct inspiration from Charlie Sheen all those years ago? Winning. If you remember that, you qualify for a veteran's discount. Environmental Boot 85 commented, "Nicely done, especially weaponizing your cat to make noise. It's not as if the downstairs neighbors can prove that you caused your cats to do zoomies. When I had my noisy downstairs neighbors, I worked nights so I was asleep during the day, and they would bang around all day when I was trying to sleep. I would get out the cat toys in the early hours of the morning and make my cat run up and down the hallway so it sounded like Godzilla stomping around. My cat would also bang the lid of its covered litter box for about 5 minutes and scratch around in it, so it would sound like he was digging his way to the upside down. Now I have nice quiet neighbors downstairs, so I can actually sleep better." Our next story is, "That was his lapdog." When I was a kid, I was given a dog. A dog that would have been really expensive if he hadn't been neutered. He had been owned by the friend of my mother, and before he was given to me, he was a show dog that won Best in Show multiple times. Being a kid, I really didn't think much about it, but later I asked how I had ended up with such a valuable prize. Well, turns out it was a bit of petty revenge. The woman who owned him was married to a man who had zero interest in dog shows. He did, however, love this one dog his wife showed, this Best in Show winning dog. A dog who was his lapdog whenever he wasn't at a show. Unfortunately for the husband, he also had no interest in being faithful to his wife. When she discovered this, she neutered the dog, gave it away, and filed for divorce. He was a great lapdog. Is it wrong of me to say that I kind of feel bad for that guy? Just because if you like dogs and you've had a lapdog before, you know how awesome and special that feels. So the guy was a jerk, sure, but losing something as awesome as a cuddly dog hurts. Our next story is, "Enjoy your ice cream." Here's a quick one for you guys. So when you go to a birthday party, obviously there's cake, and as I'm sure you all know, traditionally, the birthday kid always gets the first slice, and then everyone else gets the cake. Well, this time my dad didn't remember the memo. My birthday was on a weekday and dad works for FedEx, but sometimes he gets a break that gives him enough time to come home for 30 minutes. Me, my mom, and my brother were already home waiting for dad. The plan was to eat cake as soon as he got home. We just have cake while dad was home for break, but we would have a birthday dinner when he got home that night, which is exactly what happened. Everyone sang happy birthday and I blew out the candles, and dad started to cut the cake, making a big slice, but instead of giving me the first piece, he instead went straight to the table and ate it. I wasn't very happy. Dad later said that he had to leave since he was on break, but in reality, he was just getting in the door 10 minutes earlier. He had plenty of time to wait. I wasn't going to let it slide. The revenge? So dad has a negative reaction to chocolate for some reason. He's not allergic, he just can't eat chocolate. It messes up his stomach. In addition to cake, we were also having ice cream for birthdays. Normally, mom would get some from the store, but this time she asked me to get some instead. She said I could get whatever I wanted, so I guess this also counts as malicious compliance. So I got a whole tub of chocolate ice cream, which dad can't eat without his stomach going green, while I get to have the whole thing to myself. Checkmate, old man. I don't know about this one, I'm gonna be honest. Like, should they have followed the unwritten birthday procedure? Sure. But like, he's out there supporting the family, he's popping in to celebrate on his 30-minute work break. He's probably even pretty hungry. I would give him a pass. I would say thanks, Dad. I hope you don't get a paper cut delivering more packages or chased off by a dog later. In regards to the ice cream though, if you wanted chocolate, I think it's completely fair that OP got chocolate regardless. If I had to pick, I would probably get like moose tracks with a little peanut butter cups in it or like a butter pecan. I don't know why, but my favorite ice creams are usually the ones with little bite-sized things in them. Mint chocolate chip, but with those solid little chips in there. Cookie dough with the cookie dough bites. Ambitious Ganache 891 commented, "Why was it so important to have cake while your dad was home during a 30-minute lunch break? Why couldn't you all have just waited until he was home for dinner so no one had to rush?" Truth Imaginary 4459 replied, "I mean, yeah. He probably didn't mean to rush everyone, but in his head it was probably, I need to eat so I can get going, and didn't process. That wasn't very thoughtful or respectful to his experience. He couldn't actually celebrate, he had to go through the motions. I mean, yes, birthday kid gets the first piece, but you also seem mature enough to be on Reddit and, well, you're not a kid anymore. Or you shouldn't be. Then you should get off of Reddit because you're too young to be here. Find another way to make up for that feeling. Although I do respect the petty revenge, just leave it there though. Don't hold it against him." Our next story is, Let Me Ask Kitty. Was about 1996 or 97. I was working part-time as technical support for a local dial-up internet service provider. Gen Z, look it up at the library using the card catalog. It was just myself and my coworker Kitty working. Kitty is, as the name suggests, a woman. Customer calls up. Kitty answers the phone. Customer says, "Is there a man there? I have a technical problem." Kitty smiles and transfers it over to me. Now, Kitty had been working in the industry longer than I had, and we often helped each other out. It certainly wasn't a case of her being non-technical. After I accepted the transfer, every time he asked a question, I would say, "One moment please," and badly covered the mouthpiece. I would then say, "Hey Kitty, he wants to know," and repeat the question. She would respond, and I would repeat the answer back to him. Even with the delay, it was still a quick call, 5 minutes or so, but he didn't sound particularly pleased that Kitty solved this problem. You know, I'm almost disappointed going into the story that it wasn't a feline consultation going on here. Instead, it's just Eric Foreman's mom. Received one commented, "I've had this happen to me as well. I worked in a large retail chain that sold tools, car supplies, household items, outdoors furniture, and sporting goods, as well as other items. At the time, I was in sporting goods, hunting department in particular. I am of the mind, if I'm going to sell it, I really should learn about it. Even though I don't hunt and rarely fish, I still often read the books and would Google things, as well as listen and ask questions. If I didn't know, I would find out to the best of my capabilities for the customer. I was the assistant manager to the department and had trained my manager when he came in. One day I was at the counter reorganizing the game cameras and filling stock, and a fella comes in asking for a man to assist him. I call my manager over and he says, "Sure, I can help if you'd like." So I continue to stock and tidy the counter adjacent. Then proceeds to re-ask me the questions in front of the man. Then he says to the fella, "Why didn't you ask her? She knows more about these than anyone else in the store." This type of interaction happened a lot to me, including when I worked in the hardware and small engine departments. Poison Plushy wrote, "A woman I know who was a programmer back when programmers were mostly women got a call from some sales guy to set up an appointment. She met him at reception and he asked her what she did. So she gave him a rundown of her job description. This genius then replied, 'That sounds like a big job. I wonder why they didn't get a man to do it.' She says she had a moment where she was going to take him straight back to reception, but then decided that it would be a bigger punishment to waste his time. So she took him to her office and let him do the full sales pitch and saw him out politely, and then put in a recommendation to never ever buy anything from that company and put in an order to their competitor the same day, making sure to ask for a female sales rep. The company she worked for was a large international vehicle manufacturer, so the contract was substantial. When he called back to ask about an order, she told him that she had liked the product so much she had ordered it right away from Jane Smith at competitor. He actually had the gall to call back and complain to her manager, but he just laughed at the guy and told him to mind his manners next time. Our next story is, truck driver didn't let me pass, so I made him wait longer. So Thursday, one of our drivers called in sick and I had to fill in. We're transporting overseas containers. At the depot, there are usually 2 lanes and smaller terminals, one for driving through and one for parking to pick up or deliver your container. The lanes were a little backed up, but no big issue. Crane operator came downwards, finished the driver in front of me, he drove out, and the next one took his spot. Now my problem was with the driver who came after him. I was next in line until the first guy I mentioned parked his truck. The operator had already lifted my container, and everybody could see that. But still, this freaker drove his truck right next to mine, even 2 meters further. I was finished and couldn't get out. The guy after him, driving lane, saw that and even didn't pull up, leaving space for this jerk to back up so I could leave, because usually the crane operators drive the positions upward, finish up the drivers along the way, and then downward, same story. They don't go back for a single driver. I told him, "Dude, could you back up? I'm finished." Rather dumb given the circumstance that he drove further anyways, but still. He was like, "No way, I got this position, I'm staying here." I reply, "My man, I'm finished, the crane operator won't come here anytime soon. You can just back up and even take my parking spot." He replies, "If you say pretty please, I just might." Which really ticked me off, because house rules even state that you're supposed to pick the next position if yours is taken, or drive another round if that doesn't work either. So this guy was parking in the driving lane, a place where he had no entitlement to, which was prohibited, acting like I was asking him for money. Now, I know every worker at said depot. I know most of them even personally. I just don't like bothering people during work, but this time I had to do something, so I called the operator on his cell, instructed him to clear the guy in front of me so I could leave, and then told him what happened between me and the idiot to my left. I made sure he knew which truck I was talking about. "You see the guy, white truck, license plate XYZ? He says, "Yeah, brother." I say, "Make sure he has to unpack his camping tent. This freaker needs to learn." "Sure thing, brother," he said, and I left. Turns out we had the same customer, big company receiving multiple containers per day. Dude came in 2 hours later, I was told by the security guard at the gate. I was annoyed that I had to wait a bit despite nobody else being there. Now imagine this guy standing last in a line of a whole gaggle of truck drivers. I just feel like if there's a profession that once you're in there, you're probably in that field for a long time, it's something like truck drivers, especially if somebody seems like they're old enough to have been doing it for a while. You build up some personal relationships. I mean, as far as I'm aware, all of these people have like a universal radio or something that they can talk to each other on the road from. It just seems like all around a bad profession to be acting like a total idiot and making enemies, not friends. Diabla Arc commented, "And this is exactly why you should have a professional network, no matter the occupation. excellent work. Moist Lakings commented, I'm a superintendent for a big glazing contractor. I'm always super nice to security, gate people, flagging people, elevator and skip drivers, laborers and cleaners, crane drivers, forklift or zoom boom drivers. I grab people coffee, ask them about their families, etc. Once in a while, a new guy will be like, why are you so nice to all these guys you don't need to talk to? Then a truck shows up late in someone else's time slot, or there's a scheduling conflict in a work area, or there's some surprise after work hours. I always get my way. No problem, boss. We can get you unloaded quick. Plumber can wait. Oh yeah, for sure we can let you in the building. Well, this isn't a pickup floor, but for you, no problem. Cleaners just cleaning up after my guys unprompted or making sure they have a bin nearby. Other trades happy to let us work in the area before them. No fight. Being good to people, especially those that you don't need to be, is a superpower many don't understand. Our next story is Park a Big Car in a Compact Spot, eh? A few years ago, I was going to a work holiday party at a pizza restaurant in a small strip mall. When I got there, the lot was packed. I didn't want to use the valet, and there was one open spot. A spot in the compact section, bordered on each side by a large vehicle that came up to or over the line. I drove a smart car, one of the most compact vehicles you can get, so I thought, challenge accepted. I parked exactly in the middle of the compact spot and could just barely squeeze out of the driver's side door. And I knew that the person to my right had no prayer of getting in the driver's side door of their BMW, and because there was another car parked too close on their passenger side, they wouldn't be able to slip in that way either. But that is not my problem. After a couple hours of eating pizza and socializing, I went out to my car. The driver of the BMW was there waiting for me. "Oh good, you're here," he said. He didn't seem mad. I guess he accepted that he broke the rules and I followed them. He went back into the store he'd been at to get his things or whatever as I pulled out my smart car. Unfortunately for him, the second I pulled out, a Prius pulled in, blocking him in again. "Sorry, pal. I guess you'll be waiting a while longer." I'm assuming that this place was probably jam-packed, so I don't know if I really blame him for taking that risk of parking in the compact spot. That said, if I was the BMW owner and I finally had a chance to get out of there, I think I would sooner pull the car out and just pull it up in front of the store, run back in and grab whatever and run back out to the car, rather than take that chance of somebody swooping in there. Cat Crazed commented, "I have a handicap tag on my car, so I often end up parking in one of those van accessible spots that has extra room on either side, so someone with a wheelchair can get in and out of their vehicles. The parking garage I use for work has a very limited amount of handicap spaces. Several times now, people have been pulled into the van accessible extra spaces, making it impossible for someone with a wheelchair, walker, or crutches to access their car doors. Yesterday, a lady with a big SUV parked in the extra space, and it irked me quite a bit. So today, I purposely parked in the van accessible spot, but over the lines by a few inches so no one could park in the extra space." Our next story is Dirty Dishes Darken the Doorway. Back in the late 90s, I rented a room in a small house with my older sibling, a couple who rented another bedroom, a guy who crashed on our couch, and another couple who had the whole finished basement. My sibling slept in the largest bedroom with its own attached bathroom. It was at the end of the upstairs hallway, with the staircase on one side and the guest bath on the other, so there was a narrow egress from their bedroom. They were in the habit of refusing to take responsibility for their actions, often impacting the rest of us in the house. For example, they would come home from work, fix a meal, take the food to their room, and leave the kitchen a wreck. When asked to clean up, they would make excuses about how tired they were. Yet they would be up for hours watching TV before going to sleep. It was common to go several days without washing the dishes they had used, letting them pile up in the kitchen sink. Food-encrusted pots, pans, plates, bowls, utensils, just nasty. Flies buzzing, stinky stuff. It made it difficult for anyone else to use the sink, especially when they would plug the sink, fill it with soapy water, and then flake off. I finally got sick of their negligence and began carting anything they left in the sink upstairs and spread the stuff they had abandoned on the floor outside their bedroom door. They'd have to move the stuff to leave the upstairs. I still remember the satisfaction I got when I would hear them curse and rant after having stepped in something in the dark. They never knew I was the one blocking their door. I mean, something like this is kind of how you have to deal with these people when you're rooming with people who won't take care of the space. Especially when there's a situation where they're maybe using stuff that you're providing that they're not helping with. Like just the other day, there was a story about toilet paper rolls where people were saying other roommates wouldn't provide or wouldn't change out the rolls when the last one was completely used up. So somebody switched up to just having a process of keeping a toilet paper roll in their room that when they went to the bathroom, they would take the roll with them. That way, when the one in the bathroom inevitably runs out, OP's not gonna have to be the one to change it again. It sucks, but you almost have to play a game of figuring out how to make these roommates actually address their shortcomings. Wawa commented, "I had a roommate when I was in my early 20s who was quite messy. I wasn't a clean freak, but I couldn't stand the clutter. She decided to go on vacation for a week, and I told her ahead of time that I was going to clean the house and asked what I should do with her stuff in the common area. We had just gotten some crates from a local orchard, and she had told me to just put them in the crates and put them on her bed. I did exactly that. When she arrived home, the living room was spotless. It was beautiful. I had enjoyed living without the clutter while she was gone. She walked into her bedroom, dropped her bag straight onto the floor, and burst into tears. Her bed was virtually covered in stuff. She was already tired from travel, and now she had to take the time to clear off her bed. At least it was in crates. And no, it didn't end our friendship. We lived together for 2 more years, and more than 40 years later, we're still friends." Our next story is the mysterious missing pen. There was this guy in my office who constantly borrowed my pens and never returned them. It wasn't just 1 or 2 pens, it was a regular thing, and I was tired of losing my favorite ones. So, I decided to turn the tables. I went to the store, bought a pack of the cheapest, most obnoxiously bright pens I could find, and left one on my desk every day. But here's the twist. I subtly marked each one with a small dot of permanent ink only I knew about. It wasn't visible at first glance, but after a couple of weeks, I noticed that every time one of my pens disappeared, he had a bright, garish pen that definitely wasn't his. I never said a word, just quietly swapped out the pens. He eventually stopped borrowing them. Sometimes petty revenge is all about finding a way to make someone's choices a little harder to ignore. I think it's time to just switch to complete novelty. Have one of those pens that are super glittery and has the giant fuzzy puff at the end where you click the pen. I mean, you can't stealthily steal something like that. It's gonna be obvious where it came from. Our next story is Queuemate. In the UK, we love queuing. It's a national obsession. Every now and then, you meet someone who the rules don't apply. Met one this evening, so I went to our local fish and chip van early. Wanted to order everything for collection in about 30 minutes. Great. Spent the next 25 minutes sitting in the car, scrolling through stuff, got out of the car, and as I assumed my place in the queue, a knob, aka a person who normal rules don't apply, pulls up in his bling Rover, Land Rover that is never going off-road. He slides out of the car and just heads me off at the queue. Basically, he pushed in. No sweat. I know my order is being dealt with, so I wait. At the perfect moment, without a word to the knob who has assumed the wallet in-hand pose on the counter, I step forward to collect the order. No problem. I'm handed my order. Thanks, knob. This right here is one of the shortcomings of online ordering. It's great because it saves you the convenience of having to wait wherever, usually. But if you get there and it's a pretty busy place, your order is probably done, but they've only got one line and there's probably 2 to 3 people ahead of you. I just don't have the kind of confidence to go past everybody right up to the counter and say, "Hey, I got a pickup." Our next story is Lobster Spaghetti. I think this is petty, but I'll let you judge. Back in 1999, I started work in a manufacturing company. Met a few good friends and generally had a wonderful time. Now, I didn't make a ton of money, but I did all right. This has little to do with the story. A coworker or friend was getting married, and I thought it would be nice to treat him and his soon-to-be wife to a nice dinner. I asked him if I could treat them the following Saturday at our local restaurant, which name sounds like Ball of Martin. I brought up that I'm not made of money and that if they didn't order alcohol, I would be pleased to buy them dinner. My spouse and I were at the restaurant first. While sitting there, I made a what-if joke about them ordering the most expensive item on the menu, which was lobster spaghetti. I, again, don't have a problem with buying the dinner. However, I do feel that if someone is buying, try and have a little decorum and restraint. but that's just me. Anyway, they come in and we all started talking about the wedding and how exciting it is. I mentioned that we had been married for almost 10 years at the time, and marriage is a commitment and has to be cultivated and nurtured. By the time the waitstaff approached, we all knew what we were getting, and they both ordered the lobster spaghetti. I gave my honey a smile and enjoyed our meal. They had a good time, but I felt I was taken advantage of. So now for the petty revenge. It took me about 13 years to pull it off, but I think it was pretty good. The coworker's marriage ended after about 5 years and 3 kids later. Really 2 because the third is believed to be someone's else. Maybe that was the catalyst, who knows? The coworker moved to the southwest part of the US. We kept in touch on social media and I knew his location. My spouse and I were riding our motorcycle across the country and thought it would be great to stop by, so we made arrangements to meet up at a Mexican restaurant for dinner. It was implied that it would be just us 3, but when we arrived, it was him and his 3 kids and 2 of the kids' friends. We did the meet and greet and I excused myself to go to the bathroom. I stopped our server and told him that I would be paying for just my and my spouse's dinner and drinks. The table ordered lots of food, chips, salsa, cheese, and guacamole, and my friend was ordering beer after beer. After we had finished, I excused myself once again and paid for my portion. I came back to the table and gave my spouse the high sign that we were leaving. When I stood up to leave and say my goodbyes, he looked like a deer in headlights. I told him I'd paid for my portion and wished him well. It's probably not that interesting and I've done way more petty things than this, but it's definitely the longest I ever waited to return the favor. Unfortunately, there are a lot of stories that pop up like this. People that expect you to pay for the meals for some reason or split it down the middle even though they ordered way more than you did. I kind of agree though with a lot of comments on stories like these. It should just be avoided by straight up saying, hey yeah, we'd love to get dinner together. We'll just be paying for what we order, is that okay? Communication is key. Our next story is, honk your horn at me in the intersection, you can wait until I decide to turn. I was at work the other day, roughly 4 a.m. give or take, and was approaching a light that had just turned red. I put my turn signal on and pulled into the right lane. I came to a complete stop like you're supposed to, only to have the 20-something jerk behind me almost rear-end me. She laid on her horn, started flipping me off, screaming and yelling, etc. Apparently, she thought I was going to do the typical thing that so many people do in the state that I live in, which is to just slowly cruise through the stoplight if it's clear. So I sat there. I didn't make my turn. I just waited until the light turned green. This ticked her off even more, and she kept honking and yelling. When the light turned green, I made my turn, and the crazy witch pulls around beside me and starts screaming about how I have to make the turn. I need to learn the laws, I'm an idiot, yada yada yada. She then speeds away only to have to stop at the next stoplight. Sorry, Toots, there's no law in the state I live in that says you must turn right on a red light. But there is one saying come to a full stop at a red light. OP literally wrote, sorry Toots, I want to go back and read this whole post in like the 1940s. I was at work the other day, roughly 4 a.m. give or take, and was approaching a light that had just turned red. Garmy Turtle commented, oh, I can top that, just not from personal experience. This was an act of revenge committed by my former stepfather, whom I shall call Joe. He was a bit of an odd duck, having had a stroke in his mid-30s. Joe wasn't an extremely outgoing man in the first place, but became even more repressed after the stroke. As he aged, he simply became more and more reclusive. By the time he reached his 60s, you wouldn't have even noticed that he was in a room. Joe was simply a quiet and reclusive older man who most never noticed. But then he shocked all who knew him. While on his way to Sunday morning church services, he sat at a red light waiting to make a left-hand turn. When the green arrow appeared, he apparently didn't turn quickly enough for the man behind him, which provoked the man to honk his horn. Rather than going ahead with the turn, Joe chose to put the car into reverse and back into the car behind him. When asked by the police officer as to why he did this, Joe responded, "He shouldn't have honked at me." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.